first question comes from Jen out of San Antonio, Texas. She writes, "My husband and I are in the church that has turned apostate. Many issues here, but what can we do? He and I were youth teachers, and we taught the youth verse by verse. Now this has been taken away from us. The pastors want a female elder to take over, and my husband wants to stay because he wants to keep speaking the truth. He also preaches once a month because he wants the church to hear it, but it seems to be a losing battle. Everyone is offended by his teaching because we have homosexuals and people who are gay affirming leaders. What can I do for my husband to help him, and how do I keep going without losing my mind?"
Well, this is a fantastic question. And Jen, let me just say it's time for you and your husband to leave. But I probably would say stay for that one last sermon. Let him do a swan song sermon in terms of why you are leaving. You are right now in violation of clear scriptural instruction. It's one thing to have gay, lesbian, transgender people attending your church. It's quite another thing to have people affirming that lifestyle. And this, sadly, is where many churches across the nation have gone. Churches that were once evangelical, solid, Bible-believing churches now are rolling into apostasy. They are departing from the faith. And God warns in 1 Timothy that in the latter times men would indeed depart from the faith. It's articular, meaning the body of truth we know as Scripture. And so when a church gives credence to what God calls an abomination, unnatural and wicked, they have stepped over a clear line. And by your participation, especially it seems like from what you're describing that your husband is, obviously he's in some kind of a leadership position to be able to speak once a month. He is in violation of Scripture, and he's endorsing their evil by his participation. Think your way through this. Paul says, and I just turned to Romans 16:17. Now I urge you, brothers and sisters, it's generic, keep your eye on those who cause dissensions and hindrances, contrary to the teaching which you learned, and turn away from them. I mean, just think about Romans, just the letter that he had just written to them, and this is in his conclusion. In the letter, he says, for instance, that God gave them over to the lust of their hearts to impurity so that their bodies would be dishonored among them, for they exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator. For this reason, God gave them over to degrading passions, for their women exchanged the natural function for that which is unnatural, and in the same way also men abandoned the natural function of the women and burned in their desire one toward another, men with men committing indecent acts and receiving in their own persons the due penalty of their error. So God has just described homosexual behavior as degrading passions. He called it unnatural. He describes it as an indecent act. That's pretty strong language that God uses. And of course, this leads to a depraved mind. A depraved mind, when you begin to endorse these kinds of things, it goes to another level of falling away. Adikamos is a word that was used of metal that was tested, and the impurities would be removed. And of course, when the alpha prefix is put on it, it changes the meaning, but it basically means an upside-down mind. Where you call good evil and evil good. Jesus said to the church at Revelation, in Revelation, one of the 7 churches, I have a few things against you because you have those who are holding to the teaching of Balaam, who kept teaching Balak to put a stumbling block before the sons of Israel. Balak knew he couldn't rightfully curse the people of Israel. Balaam knew he couldn't rightfully curse the people of Israel, so he said to the king, well, look, I can't curse them, but let's get God to curse them and get some of your beautiful women and seduce those men and let them commit adultery. And of course, this is what was happening in one of these churches. There was moral laxity. And God says this is evil. And you're in a church that is evil. And so Paul will say to Timothy, if someone advocates a different doctrine, a different teaching that doesn't agree with sound words, that person is conceited. You're to separate from such people. So the Bible teaches such a thing as biblical separation. And you guys are not practicing it. Let me tell you in what is happening. When you, Jim, or Jen, your husband, I don't know his name, when your husband preaches a sermon, basically what you are doing is you're giving endorsement to that church, because you'll meet people out in the community and they say, oh yeah, I know that guy. He's an elder. He preaches over at such and such a church. He's a fine man. Maybe that's where we should go. And so you're helping to further the evil that church is teaching. And so your rationale is, well, I'm going to have an impact here and keep telling them the truth. Your impact is gone. It's gone at this point. You've already said they don't like you. They hate you. That's not a reason to stop preaching the truth, but it's a reason to stop preaching the truth in that church, because these people are not practicing what God says is sound teaching, healthy teaching. It's the word healthy that we get our word hygiene from. And you're to turn away from them. You are to separate from such people. And so, I know sometimes people reason, well, we've been going here, our family, for 100 years, and my dad's buried out back, and grandma and grandpa are buried out back. And look, if they could get up and leave, they would. They can't, but you should, and because you're in violation of Scripture. So give a swan song. Give a final message and address this issue directly, that you're not against LGBTQIA people. But the most unloving thing we can do as a church is to affirm this behavior, because we are helping to lead such people to hell. We're going against the clear teaching of Scripture. And by your example and your modeling, you're helping to contribute to the problem. So leave and encourage other like-minded people to leave as well. And go to passages like Romans 16:17, 1 Timothy 6:3-4, Titus 3:10 and 11, or Jesus' address in Revelation 2:14 and 15. Those would just be a sampling of biblical texts that teach us biblical separation.
Dr. Carl Broggi answers your questions about the Bible and living the Christian life Tuesday mornings at 11 on The Light, 88.7 FM, and online around the world at wagp.net.